The Library of Whispering Stars. The air in the great repository was always cool and still, scented with something like old stone, faint ozone, and the dust of fallen comets. Elian moved through the twilight quiet, his soft-soled boots making no sound on the floor of polished obsidian. His only companion was the gentle, rhythmic tap of his staff, its tip a sphere of captured moonlight that cast a soft, milky glow on the path ahead. He was the keeper, though he cannot remember being appointed, nor could he recall a time before he had walked these halls. His task was simple, comforting, and endless. He tended to the stars. They were not the burning distant infernos of the outside void, but their essence, their memories, captured and held in crystalline spheres that lined the infinite shelves of the library. Each orb, ranging in size from a marble to a great heavy globe, pulsed with a unique internal light. Some shone with the fierce blue-white of youth, others with the deep, steady red of age. Most simply glowed with a soft, silvery luminescence, the color of contentment. Elian's job was to ensure their light did not dim. He would walk the aisles, his gaze sweeping across the silent constellations on their shelves. And when he saw a star whose pulse was growing faint, he would stop. Tonight, his path took him along the Orion Spur, a familiar and comforting section filled with steady, middle-aged stars. Their whispers were low and placid, memories of slow, spiraling dances in the black, of dust motes coalescing over millennia, of the first quiet hum of gravity. Elian paused before a small golden orb. Its light was flickering, not with weakness, but with something akin to shyness. He reached out a hand, not to touch it, but to simply let his warmth radiate towards it. The library was a place of gentle influence, not of force. He held his hand there for a long, quiet moment. The air between his palm and the orb's surface seemed to shimmer. He closed his eyes, listening not with his ears, but with a deeper sense of attention he had cultivated over countless cycles. The whisper of this particular star was not a sound, but a feeling. It was the sensation of being very small and very far away, of watching galaxies turn like pinwheels in a silent cosmic wind. There was a memory of cold, the profound and unending chill of the void, but it was not a frightening cold. It was a clean, pure cold, the kind that makes you feel utterly awake. Slowly, as if soothed by his presence, the orb's flickering softened. The frantic, shy pulses steadied into a slow, rhythmic beat, like a sleeping heart. The golden light deepened, becoming richer, warmer. Elian smiled, a small, barely perceptible curve of his lips. He had not given the star anything, not really. He had simply offered his quiet company, a moment of focused peace, and the star had remembered its own strength. He lowered his hand, and the air returned to its usual coolness. He continued his walk, the moonlight from his staff gliding over the rows upon rows of silent waiting scars. The shelves soared upwards into darkness, so high that he could not see the ceiling. He had always assumed there wasn't one, that the library simply extended into the same quiet space from which the stars themselves had been gathered. The architecture was simple and grand, great pillars of what looked like solidified night, supporting shelves of the same material. There were no words, no numbers, no system of organization that he could discern. He simply knew where to go by a gentle pull, an intuition that guided his feet towards whichever star needed his attention. It was a language of light and feeling, and he was its fluent, solitary speaker. His path curved, following a gentle, almost imperceptible ramp that spiraled deeper into the library's heart. Here, the stars were older. Their light was the color of embers and old wine, deep reds and soft purples. Their whispers were slower, heavier, filled with the weight of eons. Elian walked more slowly here, his own breathing deepening to match the ancient rhythm of the place. He felt a profound sense of respect for these elders. They held memories of the universe's first breaths, of light when it was a new and startling thing. He passed a great crimson globe, easily the width of his shoulders. It hummed with a low, resonant thrum that he could feel in the bones of his chest. He did not need to offer it comfort. Its light was as steady as a mountain. Instead, he paused simply to listen. He rested his staff against a nearby pillar and placed both hands on the cool, smooth surface of the great orb. He closed his eyes and let the ancient story wash over him. There were no images, no events. It was the memory of gravity itself, the feeling of immense, slow, and certain gathering, the sense of drawing everything towards a center, not with hunger, but with an irrefutable sense of purpose. It was the feeling of becoming, of disparate dust and gas finding unity and purpose in a single massive form. The sensation was so powerful, so vast, that Elian felt as though he were dissolving into it, his own small form becoming part of that great, slow inhalation of matter. He felt the weight of ages, the patience of geology, the slow, tectonic shift of cosmic forces. It was a humbling and deeply peaceful feeling, a reminder of his own small and transient place in the grand, silent story of the cosmos. After a time, he drew his hands back, the deep thrumming still vibrating in his palms. He took a slow breath, feeling the solidity of his own body return. The air around the ancient star was warm, and he carried that warmth with him as he picked up his staff and continued his journey. The ramp had flattened out now, leading to a wide circular chamber he had not visited in many cycles. In the center of this chamber, there was no star. Instead, there was a pool. The pool was perfectly still and perfectly black, a circle of liquid night cut into the obsidian floor. It did not reflect the soft light of his staff or the glow of the surrounding stars. It seemed to absorb all light, all sound, all thought. This was the pool of silence, a place of rest for the mind. Elian approached its edge and sat down, cross-legged, letting the gentle glow of his staff illuminate the space just around him. He looked into the pool's depthless surface. It was like looking into the space between the stars, a pure and unadulterated void. There were no whispers here, no memories, no light. There was only a profound and complete stillness. He let his gaze soften, his thoughts slowing to a halt. The endless lists of stars he attended, the faint echoes of their stories, the quiet weight of his purpose, all of it dissolved into the black water. His mind became as still and quiet as the pool itself. This was also part of his work, to empty himself, to become a quiet vessel once more, so that he could better listen to the needs of the library. He sat for a long time, watching nothing, thinking nothing, simply being. The only sensation was the cool floor beneath him, and the faint distant hum of the ancient stars he had left behind. A soft chime, like a single drop of water falling into a deep well, roused him from his reverie. The sound did not come from any specific direction, but seemed to resonate from the air itself. It was the library, calling him to a different task. He rose slowly, his joints feeling loose and light after his rest by the pool. He picked up his staff, its moon orb light seeming a little brighter now against the memory of the profound darkness. He left the chamber of the pool, the silence clinging to him like a soft cloak. The gentle pull he always felt now guided him away from the familiar paths towards a section of the library he rarely explored. The architecture began to change. The great, Severe pillars of solidified night gave way to more slender, twisted columns that looked like petrified wood from some ancient cosmic forest. The air grew warmer and was tinged with a new scent, something like damp earth and blooming night flowers. He came to a halt before a small, unassuming archway he had never noticed before. It was not grand or imposing, but seemed woven from living, silvery branches that pulsed with a faint internal light. Beyond the archway lay a soft green glow. Curiosity, a gentle and pleasant feeling, stirred within him. He pushed aside a curtain of what felt like hanging moss, woven with tiny, shimmering motes of light, and stepped through. He had entered the nursery. Here, the stars were not on shelves. They floated freely in the warm, humid air like luminous seeds. They were tiny, no larger than his thumbnail, and their light was a soft, milky green. They drifted on unseen currents, bumping into each other with soft, melodic chimes. This was where new stars, or the essence of them, were born. The whispers in the nursery were different. They were not memories of things past, but dreams of things to come. They were feelings of potential, of boundless possibility. Elian drifted through the warm, green-lit space, his staff held low, so its light wouldn't overwhelm the delicate glow of the starseeds. He reached out and let one of the tiny orbs drift into his palm. It was barely worn, and it vibrated with a quick, excited energy, like the flutter of a hummingbird's wings. He closed his eyes and listened to its dream. It was a dream of color, of swirling nebulae of fuchsia and gold, a dream of motion, of a long, graceful dance through the arms of a spiral galaxy, a dream of purpose, of one day warming a small, rocky planet and watching as the first hints of life stirred in its shallow seas. It was a pure, joyful, and uncomplicated dream, full of hope and the certainty of a beautiful future. Elian held the tiny star for a moment longer, his own quiet spirit touched by its boundless optimism. He then opened his hand, and the star seed rose from his palm, chiming softly as it rejoined its siblings in their slow, aimless dance. He looked around the nursery. In the center of the vast, grotto-like room, a single thick vine descended from the unseen ceiling, coiled on the floor like a sleeping serpent. Droplets of silvery liquid, like cosmic dew, would form on the vine, swell, and then gently fall, solidifying into these tiny, dreaming stars as they descended. This was the source, a place of quiet, gentle creation. He felt a sense of privilege to be able to witness it. He had no part to play here. His role was not to create, only to tend. He was simply an observer, a quiet guardian, watching over the cradle of the cosmos. He spent some time in the nursery, simply breathing the warm, life-filled air and watching the starseeds drift and chime. The gentle, hopeful energy of the place was a balm. It was a contrast to the solemn, ancient wisdom of the older sections, and he understood that the library needed both, the memory of what has been and the dream of what will be. After a while, he felt the familiar gentle pull guiding him onwards. He gave the floating cloud of infant stars a last fond look, then passed back through the archway of living branches. Leaving the warmth of the nursery behind, he found himself in a corridor where the air was noticeably cooler. The floor here was not polished obsidian, but soft, dark dust that muffled his footsteps completely. It felt like walking on powdered midnight. The walls were gone, replaced by what looked like curtains of aurora, shimmering veils of pale green and soft violet light, that rippled as if stirred by an until breeze. He walked down this silent, soft-floored corridor, the auroral curtains parting before him and closing behind him. The only sound was the faint, ethereal rustle of the light itself. It was like walking through the heart of a dream.
The stars in this section were different again. They were not on shelves, nor did they float freely. Each star was housed within a complex crystalline structure, like a snowflake of impossible intricacy. These structures hummed suspended in the air between the shimmering curtains, rotating slowly, catching the shifting light. The effect was mesmerizing, a silent gallery of cosmic jewels. Elian stopped before a particularly beautiful structure. It was a perfect, six-pointed crystal, and nestled at its heart was a star that shone with a soft lavender light. The whispers from this star were not about age or destiny, but about patterns. It was the memory of mathematics, of elegant, unspoken laws that govern the universe. He could feel the perfect geometry of a snowflake forming from a droplet of water, the precise elliptical orbit of a planet around its sun, the mesmerizing, repeating fractal patterns of a coastline. There were no emotions in these whispers, no joy or sadness. There was only a deep, resonant sense of order, of a complex and beautiful system operating in perfect harmony. It was the kind of peace one might find in solving a difficult equation, or in seeing a complex design click into place. Elian found it deeply soothing. He watched the crystal snowflake turn, its facets catching the light of the aurora, refracting it into 1,000 tiny rainbows on the dark, dusty floor. He reached out, his fingers tracing the air just outside the crystal points. He did not touch it, for it felt complete and perfect in its solitude. He was merely an admirer in this gallery of logic and form. He spent a long time here, moving from one crystalline structure to the next, marveling at their diversity and complexity. Some were sharp and geometric, others were curved and organic, like the shells of celestial sea creatures. Each one held a star, and each star whispered its own unique verse of the universe's silent, mathematical poetry.
The corridor of crystalline stars eventually opened into a vast open space. The shimmering curtains of aurora fell away, and Elian found himself standing on a wide ledge overlooking an immense cavern. The darkness here was absolute, deeper than any he had ever seen, even in the pool of silence. But it was not empty. Drifting through the immense blackness below were what looked like islands. These were not islands of rock and soil, but floating motes of landscape. He saw a small grassy hill, complete with a single weeping willow tree, drifting slowly past. Then came a patch of desert, its sand dunes sculpted by a wind that did not blow. A little further on, a fragment of a snowy forest, its pine trees dusted with glittering frost, tumbled gently in the void. They were like captured memories of worlds, preserved and set adrift in this quiet, dark space. A narrow floating bridge of the same silvery woven branches from the nursery's entrance stretched out from the ledge, leading into the darkness. It seemed impossibly fragile, a single thread cast across an abyss. But Elian felt no fear. The library was a safe and gentle place. He tested the bridge with his foot. It was solid and hummed with a faint, reassuring warmth. He set his staff before him, its moonlight a small, brave beacon in the profound dark, and began to walk. The bridge was longer than it looked. As he walked, the ledge he had left behind was swallowed by the darkness, and for a time he was surrounded by nothing but the gentle glow of his staff and the silent, drifting islands of memory. It was profoundly quiet. The whispers of the stars were gone. The hum of the library was muted. All he could hear was the soft padding of his own boots on the woven bridge and the steady, calm rhythm of his own breathing. An island drifted close, and he paused to watch it. This one was a small circle of beach, its sand the color of pale gold. Gentle, silent waves of lake washed up on its shore, curling and unfurling without a sound. A few pearlescent shells were scattered on the sand. He could almost smell the salt in the air, feel the warmth of the sun that wasn't there. It was a memory of peace,
of a quiet coastline on a world he would never know. He watched it until it had drifted home, its silent waves continuing their endless, patient rhythm. He continued his walk, a feeling of gentle melancholy settling over him. These islands were beautiful, but they were also lonely. They were fragments of places that were lost, or perhaps had never existed at all. Dreams of worlds floating in the dark. He felt a kinship with them, for he too was a solitary wanderer in this vast, quiet place. He was not lonely, not in a sad way, but he was aware of his aloneness, a single point of consciousness in the immense, silent library. The feeling was not uncomfortable. It was just a fact, as simple and profound as the darkness around him. The bridge ended at another ledge, identical to the one he had left. It felt less like he had crossed a chasm, and more like he had passed through a moment of deep introspection. Before him stood a pair of immense doors, crafted from a dark, smooth wood that seemed to drink the light. They were unadorned, with no handles or hinges that he could see. He stood before them, waiting. He knew better than to push. After a moment of silence, a thin, vertical line of soft, golden light appeared where the two doors met. A line widened, and the great doors swung inwards, parting without a sound. They opened into a room that was warm and smelled of old paper, beeswax, and dried herbs. This was a place he had not seen in a very long time. It was a scriptorium. Unlike the rest of the library, this room was filled with books, real books, with leather-bound covers and pages of soft, creamy parchment. They were arranged on low wooden shelves that curved around the circular room. In the center, a single, tall desk stood empty. A high-backed chair tucked neatly beneath it. Soft, warm light emanated not from a single source, but from the very air itself, casting no shadows. It was a room built for quiet study, for contemplation. Elian stepped inside, and the great wooden doors swung silently shut behind him.
He ran his fingers along the spines of the books. The leather was soft and supple, warm to the touch. The titles were embossed in a script he could not read, yet somehow understood. They were not names, but concepts. One book was titled The Weight of the Shadow at Dusk. Another, The Silence Between Two Notes of a Song. A third, The Color of a Forgotten Memory. These were not books to be read in the traditional sense. They were to be experienced. Elian felt a gentle pull towards a small, slim volume bound in soft gray leather. The title he felt from it was The Feeling of Rain on a Tin Roof. He carefully lifted it from the shelf. It was light on his hands. He took it to one of the comfortable, cushioned benches that lined the walls and sat down. He did not open the book. He simply held it in his lap, closed his eyes, and rested his hands upon its cover. Slowly, a sensation began to fill his awareness. It was not a memory, but a direct and vivid feeling. He could hear the gentle, persistent patter of rain. Not a storm, but a soft, steady, cleansing shower. He could feel the coolness in the air, smell the scent of damp earth and petrichor. He felt a deep sense of coziness, of being safe and warm indoors, while the world outside was being washed clean. It was a simple, pure, and profoundly comforting feeling. There was no story, no characters, no plot. There was only the feeling itself in all its simple perfection. Elian sat with the book for a long time, letting the peaceful sensation of the rain wash over him, cleansing his mind of the gentle melancholy from the cavern of floating islands. When the feeling began to fade, like the end of a real shower, he opened his eyes. The room was just as it was, warm and silent. He felt refreshed, his spirit settled. He carefully placed the book back in its exact spot on the shelf, the gray leather warm from his touch. He felt no pull to experience another book. One was enough. The scriptorium is a place of deep and focused sensation, and it was best to partake in moderation. He walked to the center of the room,
to the tall, empty desk. The surface was smooth and clear, except for a single object in the very center, a single black feather resting next to a shallow ceramic inkwell filled with liquid light. He looked at the feather intrigued. It was a raven's feather, long and dark, with an iridescent sheen that caught the warm light of the room. He felt a faint, residual whisper coming from it, not of a star, but of a being, a memory of flight, of soaring on currents of wind, high above a sleeping world, a memory of keen, intelligent eyes, watching the slow turn of the seasons. It was the echo of a creature that had been both a part of the world and a detached observer of it. He did not touch the feather, feeling it was not for him. It was a tool for a task that was not his. He was a keeper, not a scribe. His purpose in the scriptorium fulfilled, he turned back to the great wooden doors. As he approached, the line of golden light reappeared, and they swung open to reveal the cavern of floating islands once more. He stepped back onto the woven, silvery bridge. The darkness of the cavern seemed less absolute now, softened by the memory of the warm, light-filled room he had just left. As he began to cross the bridge, he noticed something new. A small, luminous boat, shaped like a crescent-moon, was tethered to the side of the bridge by a rope of woven starlight. It bobbed gently, its inner curve emitting a soft, welcoming glow. It had not been there before. The library, it seemed, was offering him a new path. The thought of floating among the islands of memory was a pleasant one. The walk across the bridge had been meditative, but a slow, silent voyage seemed even more so. He made his way to the boat and stepped carefully inside. The floor was surprisingly solid, lined with a material that felt like soft, cool moss. He sat down in the curve of the crescent, and the boat felt perfectly balanced. The rope of starlight untethered itself from the bridge and dissolved into motes of light, setting him adrift. The boat began to move, not propelled by any oar or sail, but guided by a gentle, unseen current that flowed through the vast, dark space.
The journey was even slower and more peaceful than he had imagined. The crescent-moon boat drifted in utter silence, its soft light a tiny, mobile sanctuary in the immense darkness. It steered its own course, taking him on a meandering path through the archipelago of memories. He leaned back against the high curve of the crescent, his staff resting beside him, and simply watched. A new island floated near. It was a tiny snippet of a city street at night. A single gas lamp cast a pool of orange light on a wet cobblestone street. He could see the reflection of a neon sign from a closed bakery shimmering in a puddle. There were no people, no cars, no sounds, just the quiet, lonely beauty of the scene. It was a memory of urban solitude, the feeling of being alone in a sleeping city, and it was beautiful. The boat drifted past, and the scene was swallowed by the dark. Later, he floated by a memory of a single, ancient tree on a windswept cliff, its branches gnarled and twisted against a sky the color of bruises. The air around the island felt cold and smelled of sea salt and damp rock. It was a memory of resilience, of enduring countless storms, of standing firm against the elements. Elian did not feel the wind or the cold, but he felt the echo of that strength, the quiet dignity of the old tree. He watched it until it, too, had receded into the quiet blackness. The boat drifted on. Time seemed to have no meaning here. There was no day or night, only the constant, gentle twilight of his boat's glow against the profound darkness. He was not hungry or tired. The library provided all he needed, though he could not say how. His existence was one of pure experience, a continuous, gentle present moment. The current eventually guided his boat towards a particularly large island, one that was not a landscape, but a structure. It was a fragment of a colossal building, a single vast hall with a vaulted ceiling and great arched windows. Through the windows, he could see not sky, but a swirling nebula of soft pink and blue.
The floor of the hull was a mosaic of colored tiles, and in the center stood a single stone fountain, from which flowed not water, but a slow, thick stream of liquid shadow. The boat nudged gently against the broken edge of the hull's floor, coming to a stop. It seemed to be an invitation. Elian stood up and stepped out of the boat, his boots making a soft sound on the tiled floor. The air here was still and carried a faint scent like cool stone and incense. He felt he was standing in a place of forgotten worship, a temple dedicated to the beauty of the cosmos. He walked slowly towards the fountain of shadow, his curiosity piqued. The fountain was carved from a single piece of gray veined stone. The liquid shadow that flowed from it was cool and did not wet his hand when he tentatively reached into the stream. It felt like touching smoke. The shadow flowed over the lip of the fountain's basin and down its sides, where it pooled on the floor before dissolving into nothingness. It made no sound. Elian looked up at the vaulted ceiling. It was so high, it was lost in darkness, but he could see the arches of the windows, and through them, the slow, majestic churn of the distant nebula. It was like being in an observatory and a cathedral at the same time. He felt a sense of reverence in this place, a quiet awe. This was not a memory of a specific feeling, like the rain on the roof, but a memory of a place designed to evoke a feeling, a place built from wonder. He walked the length of the great hall, his small form dwarfed by the immense scale of the architecture. He felt a profound sense of peace here. It was the peace of perspective, the understanding of his own smallness in the face of such grandeur. It was not a diminishing feeling, but a liberating one. The small worries and quiet duties of his existence seemed to melt away in the face of the vast, silent beauty of the cosmos framed by the great windows. He had no task here, no star to tend, no book to experience. His only purpose was to be present, to witness, and to feel the awe. After what felt like a long, peaceful eternity, he returned to the fountain of shadow. His boat was still waiting for him, a patient, glowing crescent against the tiled floor. He was ready to leave. He had absorbed the peace of the temple, and it had settled deep within him. He stepped back into the boat, and as soon as he was seated, it pushed away from the island, resuming its gentle, meandering journey through the dark. He watched a temple of the nebula grow smaller and smaller until it was just another mote of light and memory, eventually disappearing completely. He was alone again in the quiet darkness, but the feeling of awe remained with him, a warm ember in his chest. The boat's course now seemed more purposeful. It was no longer wandering, but was heading towards a faint, distant cluster of lights. As he drew closer, he saw that it was not another island. It was a collection of stars, much like the ones on the shelves in the main library, but these were not in orbs. They hung freely in the darkness, like a small, self-contained galaxy. They were all colors, blue, gold, red, green, violet, and they spun slowly, casting their gentle, multicolored light into the void. It was breathtakingly beautiful. The boat slowed as it entered the starfield, the light of 100 tiny suns wafting over him. The whispers here were a symphony. Each star had its own voice, its own story, but here they blended together into a harmonious whole. It was not overwhelming. The combined whispers created a single, complex, and beautiful chord of feeling. He felt joy, sorrow, peace, longing, and contentment all at once, but the feelings were not chaotic. They were balanced, each one complementing the others, like the different instruments in a vast cosmic orchestra. His boat drifted through the heart of the miniature galaxy. A small, bright blue star zipped past, its whisper a feeling of pure, unadulterated speed and freedom. A large, deep red star drifted by, more slowly, its whisper a heavy, peaceful sense of ancient, dreamless sleep. A pair of golden stars danced around each other in a graceful orbit, their combined whisper a feeling of perfect companionship and mutual gravitation. Elian closed his eyes, letting the symphony of starlight and feeling wash through him. He felt connected to everything. The distinct, individual stories of the library had merged into a universal song. He felt the joy of the newborn star in the nursery, the solemnity of the ancient star in the deep halls, the precision of the crystal star in the aurora corridor, the peace of the forgotten temple. It was all here, all part of the same grand, beautiful story. He felt a tear, cool and single, trace a path down his cheek. It was not a tear of sadness, but of a profound and overwhelming sense of belonging. His boat eventually drifted out of the starfield, and the symphony of whispers faded back into a gentle, distant hum. He opened his eyes, feeling calm and profoundly changed. The single tear had dried on his skin, leaving the faint coolness behind. He looked ahead and saw that his journey was nearing its end. The boat was approaching a solid shoreline, a continuation of the obsidian floor of the library he knew. A soft, warm light grew brighter as he approached. He saw a gentle, sloping shore, and, a little way inland, a small, simple structure. It was a cottage, made of the same dark wood as the doors to the scriptorium, with a low roof and a single, round window from which a golden light was glowing. A thin curl of silvery smoke rose from a small stone chimney. It looked impossibly cozy and welcoming. The boat glided into the shallows and came to rest with a soft bump against the obsidian shore. The journey was over. Elian stood and stepped out onto the solid ground. He gave the crescent-moon boat a grateful look, and it seemed to dip its points in acknowledgement before drifting back into the darkness and disappearing. He turned his attention to the cottage. He felt a gentle pull towards it, a sense of homecoming, though he had never seen it before. He walked up the slight incline, the ground soft beneath his feet, towards the source of the warm, inviting light.
The cottage door was made of a single, smooth plank of dark wood, with a simple wrought iron latch. It was slightly ajar, and the golden light from within spilled out onto the obsidian ground. The scent coming from inside was warm and comforting, a mixture of burning wood, cinnamon, and something else, something familiar and deeply reassuring that he couldn't quite name. He pushed the door open gently. It swung inward without a sound. The interior was a single round room, just as he had imagined. The walls were lined with low bookshelves, but these were filled with small polished stones and pieces of colored sea glass instead of books or stars. A small, comfortable-looking bed with a thick patchwork quilt was tucked into an alcove. A simple wooden table and 2 chairs stood in the center of the room, and in a small stone fireplace, a fire of silvery wood crackled merrily, casting a dancing, warm light across the room. Sitting in one of the chairs, with their back to the door, was a figure. They were wrapped in a heavy woven cloak, and they did not turn as he entered. Elian paused at the doorway, his hand on the cool wood. He felt no fear, only a quiet curiosity. After all his solitary wandering, the presence of another being was a strange and novel feeling. He stepped inside, letting the door swing shut behind him, enclosing him in the warmth and the soft, crackling sound of the fire. The figure at the table did not move. Elian stood for a moment, letting his eyes adjust to the warm light. The cottage felt ancient and lived in, a place of quiet contentment. He took a step forward, his soft boots making no sound on the smooth wooden floor. He walked around the table to see the person's face. It was an old woman. Her face was a beautiful map of wrinkles. Her eyes were closed as if in peaceful contemplation, and a gentle smile rested on her lips. Her hair was long and the colored spun moonlight, braided into a thick plait that rested on her shoulder. She seems to be a part of the cottage, as ancient and peaceful as the stones on her shelves. Elian felt that he should not disturb her, that she might be deep in a dream. On the table in front of her was a steaming ceramic mug
and a single, perfectly round, smooth black stone. As he watched, the woman opened her eyes. They were not the eyes of an old person. They were clear and bright, the color of a twilight sky, filled with a gentle, knowing light. She looked at him, and her smile widened slightly. "Welcome, Keeper," she said. Her voice was like the rustle of dry leaves, soft and warm. "I have been waiting for you. Please, sit." She gestured to the empty chair opposite her. Elian, feeling a sense of calm reassurance from her presence, sat down. "You have traveled far," the old woman said, her gaze kind. "Through memories and dreams." She picked up the steaming mug and pushed it gently across the table towards him. "Drink. It will settle the starlight in your veins." Elian looked down at the mug. The liquid inside was a deep, calming blue, and it swirled with tiny, shimmering motes of silver. It smelled of chamomile and honey and the night sky. He wrapped his hands around the warm sarag and took a small sip. The warmth spread through him instantly, a deep, soothing heat. It seemed to travel all the way to his fingertips and toes. The flavors were gentle and familiar, yet unlike anything he had ever tasted. It was like drinking a cozy memory. He felt the last vestiges of his long journey's awe and melancholy settle into a quiet, peaceful contentment. He took another sip and looked at the woman. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice soft. She chuckled, a sound like wind chimes. "I have been called many things. Some call me the weaver, others the scribe. You may call me whatever feels right." She gestured to the room around them. "This is my home, a quiet pocket in the library's heart, a place for rest." She then picked up the smooth black stone from the table, holding it in her palm. "And this is my work. While you tend to the stars that are, I listen for the stories that wish to be."
Elian looked at the black stone in her hand. It seemed to be a simple, river-worn pebble. "I do not understand," he said. The woman, the weaver, smiled her gentle, knowing smile. "The star orbs you care for are memories, essences of things that have lived and shone. They are beautiful, but they are complete. The books in the scriptorium are feelings distilled and pure. But the universe is still creating. There are always new stories forming in the quiet places, new songs beginning in the dark." She rolled the stone in her palm. "Sometimes a story doesn't need to be a star. It is too small, too quiet, too personal. It is the story of a single falling leaf, or the feeling of a promise kept. These small, quiet tales gather like dew. I find them and I give them a home." She gestured to the shelves, to the hundreds of polished stones and gleaming pieces of sea glass. "Each of these holds one such story. A tiny whisper, a fleeting feeling, given a place to rest." Elian looked around the room with new eyes. He saw now that the cottage was a library of its own, a library of a different kind. Not of cosmic grandeur, but of intimate, small-scale beauty. The quiet joy of finding a lost object, the bittersweet pang of a happy memory, the gentle satisfaction of a task well done. The room was filled with the quiet, humble poetry of everyday existence. "You have done your work well, Keeper," the weaver said, her voice pulling him from his thoughts. "You have listened to the grand symphonies. You have felt the weight of eons. But it is also good to remember the small notes that make up the music." She placed the black stone back on the table. "Your own journey has created a new story, a story of quiet wandering, of gentle discovery." She reached out her wrinkled hand and placed it over his, which was still wrapped around the warm mug. Her touch was dry and warm, like sun-baked earth. "Rest now," she said. "The library is quiet. The stars are content. The fire is warm. Rest is also a part of the work." Elian felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. The need to wander, to seek, to tend had vanished completely. It was replaced by a simple, deep desire for stillness,
He looked at the crackling fire, at the shelves of quiet stories, at the weaver's kind and ancient face. He felt he had arrived at the end of a journey he hadn't even known he was on. He nodded, feeling a gentle, pleasant weariness behind his eyes. He finished the drink in the mug, the last sip as warm and comforting as the first. The weaver took the empty mug from him and placed it on the table. "The bed is soft," she said simply. Elian rose from the chair and walked to the alcove. The patchwork quilt on the bed was made of 100 different fabrics, each one soft and worn. He could see squares of velvet the color of a night sky, soft wool the gray of a misty morning, and smooth cotton printed with faint, faded star charts. It looked like a quilt made of peaceful dreams. He lay down on the bed, not bothering to remove his soft boots or his tunic. He was not tired in a physical sense, but his spirit was ready for repose. The mattress was soft and enveloped him in a gentle embrace. The weaver began to hum, a low, melodic tune without words. It seemed to blend with the crackling of the fire and the quiet hum of the library beyond the cottage walls. It was a lullaby of profound and ancient peace. Elian pulled the heavy quilt over him. It was warm and smelled of cedar and lavender. He turned his head to look at the fire, its silvery flames dancing and swaying. The light cast soft, moving shadows on the ceiling. He felt utterly safe, completely at peace. His long, silent journey had led him here, to this quiet room, to this warm bed, to this gentle, humming lullaby. He closed his eyes, and the darkness that met him was not the vast, empty black of the void, but the soft, warm, and welcoming darkness of deep and dreamless sleep.
He did not know how long he slept. In the timeless expanse of the library, it could have been a moment or an age. He awoke slowly, gently, as if drifting up from a deep, calm sea. The first thing he noticed was the silence. The fire had burned down to glowing silvery embers, and the weaver's humming had ceased. The cottage was filled with a soft gray light, the color of dawn. He sat up, the patchwork quilt pooling in his lap. He felt profoundly rested, his mind clear and still, like the surface of the pool of silence. The weaver was gone. Her chair was empty, and the table was clear, save for the single, smooth black stone that still rested in its center. Elian swung his legs off the bed, his boots touching the cool, smooth wooden floor. The air was cool but not cold, and smelled of wood smoke and morning. He walked to the table and picked up the black stone. It was cool and felt pleasant in his palm, its weight familiar and grounding. He felt a faint echo from it, the memory of his own journey, the quiet awe in the temple, the gentle melancholy of the floating islands, the harmonious symphony of the starfield. The weaver had been right. His journey had become one of her quiet stories. He pocketed the stone, a small, tangible reminder of his odyssey. He went to the door and pushed it open. The world outside was no longer the profound darkness of the void, but a soft, misty twilight. The obsidian shore stretched out before him, and beyond it lay not a chasm, but a calm gray sea that faded into the mist. The crescent boat was gone. He looked around and saw a new path, one that hadn't been there before, leading away from the cottage and along the misty shoreline. It was a simple path of pale silvery sand, winding away into the gentle gloom. He knew, with the quiet certainty that always guided him, that this was his way back. His time of rest and revelation was over, and his work was waiting for him. But he did not feel a sense of urgency. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, quieter and deeper than before. He took one last look at the cozy cottage, a silent thank you to the weaver, wherever she was. Then he turned and began to walk along the path of silver sand. His staff, which he had left leaning by the bed, was now in his hand,
though he could not remember picking it up. Its moon orb light was soft in the misty air, its glow mingling with the twilight. His footsteps made a soft, rhythmic crunching sound on the sand, a gentle counterpoint to the profound silence that surrounded him. The walk was peaceful and meditative. The mist swirled around him, cool and damp on his cheeks. It obscured any distant views, creating a small, personal world that moved with him. All that existed was the silvery path beneath his feet, the soft glow of his staff, and the endless, quiet gray of the mist and the sea. He walked without any sense of destination, trusting the path to lead him where he needed to go. After a time, he began to hear a sound, faint at first, then growing stronger. It was the familiar, gentle hum of the library's main corridors, the collective whisper of 1,000,000 resting stars. The mist began to thin, and he saw familiar shapes emerging from the gray. The great, dark pillars of the older sections, the towering shells rising up into the unseen heights. The sandy path blended seamlessly with the polished obsidian floor, and he found himself back in a part of the library he knew well. He was near the chamber of the great ancient crimson star. He could feel its deep, slow thrumming in the floor, a steady, cosmic heartbeat welcoming him back. He was home, but something within him had shifted. The library felt the same, but he was seeing it with new eyes, listening with new ears.
He resumed his duties, but they felt different now. Less like a task and more like a conversation. When he paused before a star whose light was dimming, he no longer felt just a sense of duty, but a deep personal empathy. He would hold his hand out, and in the star's shy or weary whispers, he could now discern finer details. He could feel the echo of the hopeful dreams of the nursery, the memory of the perfect mathematical patterns, the solitude of a long and lonely journey. His own experiences had deepened his understanding. He was no longer just the keeper. He was a fellow traveler. He had floated on the same currents of memory. He had felt the same quiet awe at the beauty of the cosmos. When he offered his silent comfort to a struggling star, it was now an offering of shared experience, a quiet understanding that passed between them. He found he didn't need to rest by the pool of silence as often. The peace he had found in the weaver's cottage had settled deep within him, a permanent reservoir of calm he could draw upon. The library felt less like an infinite, mysterious place and more like a home, a vast, strange, and beautiful home, filled with countless quiet lives, and he was privileged to be a part of it, its gentle, solitary guardian. Days, or what passed for days in the timeless library, folded one into the next. Elian's routine was a gentle, flowing river of quiet purpose. He walked the familiar corridors, his moon staff casting its soft glow, the obsidian floor cool beneath his feet. The memory of his journey to the weaver's cottage was not a sharp, vivid recollection, but a soft, warm color that had stained his perception of everything. A little black stone in his pocket was a constant, smooth weight, a point of connection to that deeper quiet. One cycle, a gentle pull that guided him, led him not to a dimming star, but to a section of shelves he had passed 1,000 times, yet never truly explored. It was a high, narrow aisle, and the stars here were all very small, no bigger than a child's fist. Their light was a uniform, pale blue, the color of a winter sky at noon. Their collective whisper was so faint it was almost imperceptible, like the sound of ice crystals forming on a window pane. He stopped, tilting his head. The pull was insistent, focused on this particular aisle. He walked slowly down the narrow corridor, a pale blue light casting stark, long shadows behind the shelves. The air here was colder than anywhere else in the library, a clean, sharp cold that felt ancient and pure. He ran his fingers along the edge of a shelf, the material here feeling not like stone,
but like cool, unmelting ice. He paused before one of the small blue orbs. It seemed no different from its neighbors, its light a steady, pale glow. But as he focused, tuning his senses to its whisper, he understood. The whispers from these stars were not memories of heat or motion or gravity. They were memories of stillness. They were the stories of the spaces between things. He listened to this one star, and he felt the profound, patient silence of a rock buried deep within the earth, waiting for millennia to be uncovered. He felt the stillness of a frozen lake, its surface a perfect mirror, its depths holding the memory of summer in a cold embrace. He felt the quiet pause between the last note of a song and the beginning of applause, a tiny pocket of perfect, suspended time. These were the stars of quietude, of peaceful, waiting emptiness. They were the counterpoint to the loud, bright stories of creation and cosmic collision. Elian realized the library was more complete than he had ever imagined. It held not just the story of existence, but the story of non-existence, of the peaceful voids and patient silences that made the music of the universe possible. He felt a new wave of reverence for the complexity and balance of this place.
He continued down the aisle of silent stars, the cold air feeling cleansing and pure. At the very end of the long, narrow corridor, there was a single empty pedestal. It was made of the same ice-like material as the shelves, and it seemed to be waiting for something. Elian felt the familiar pull focus on this empty spot, a clear, unmistakable feeling that something belonged here. He looked around. There were no new stars waiting to be shelved, no orbs that had fallen. The aisle was pristine, perfect in its cold order. He was puzzled. The library had never asked him to find something that was lost, only to tend to what was present. He stood before the empty pedestal, his brow furrowed in gentle concentration. He reached out, running his hand over the cold, smooth surface. It felt expectant. He closed his eyes, quieting his mind, trying to understand what the library wanted from him. He thought of all the places he had been, the stars he had listened to. He thought of the nursery, the scriptorium, the floating islands. He thought of the weaver's cottage. And then he remembered the small, smooth black stone in his pocket. He pulled it out. It was dark and inert against the pale blue light of the surrounding stars. But as he held it over the pedestal, he felt a faint resonance, a hum of recognition between the stone and the empty spot. With a sense of dawning understanding, Elian gently placed the small black stone onto the center of the icy pedestal. The moment it touched the surface, a soft white light bloomed from within the stone, a light it had not possessed before. It was not a bright, stellar light, but a gentle, luminous glow, the color of soft morning fog. The stone began to float an inch above the pedestal, turning slowly. A new whisper entered the aisle, joining the chorus of quietude. But this whisper was different. It was the story he himself had created. The feeling of stepping onto the woven bridge in the darkness. The scent of beeswax and old paper in the scriptorium. The taste of the weaver's calming drink. The warmth of the patchwork quilt. It was a story of a journey, of discovery, and of peaceful return. He understood now. The library was not just a passive repository. It was a living, growing thing. And he was not just its keeper, but a part of its story. His own experiences, his own quiet journey, had become a new memory, a new point of light, worthy of preservation. It was a humbling and beautiful thought. His small, quiet life was now a permanent part of this vast cosmic collection, a tiny, soft note in its endless song. He stood for a long time in the cold blue aisle, watching his own story glow softly in the quiet. Leaving the aisle of stillness with its new gentle light, Elian felt a sense of completeness. The circle felt closed. He had taken a story from the library, and now he had given one back.
He resumed his walk, but a new sense of purpose bloomed within him. If his journey could create a new exhibit, then perhaps there were other undiscovered stories waiting not on the shelves, but in the unwalked corridors and forgotten corners of the library itself. A gentle curiosity, the same feeling that had first led him to the nursery, began to stir it again. He decided to let the guiding pole recede and to simply walk where his feet took him. He chose a direction he had never taken, turning down a wide, arching hallway where the pillars were not dark, but were made of a warm, golden-veined marble. The air here was warmer and carried a faint, sweet scent like honey and sunlight. The stars on these shelves were different yet again. They were large, hazy orbs, air-like diffuse and soft, as it seemed through a summer haze. Their whispers were lazy and slow, filled with a sense of blissful languor. He paused by one and listened. It was the memory of a long, warm afternoon in a field of wildflowers. The feeling of sun on your skin, the buzz of bees, a gentle sway of the grass in a warm breeze. There was no grand cosmic drama, just a perfect, simple, sleepy peace.
Elian drifted down the sun-drenched corridor, the warmth seeping into his bones. It was a section dedicated to contentment, to simple earthly pleasures. Another star held the memory of a cat, curled up and purring in a patch of sunlight. Another held the feeling of biting into a perfectly ripe peach, the sweet juice running down your chin. Another held the simple joy of watching clouds drift across a blue sky. These were small, terrestrial memories, but they were no less profound than the stories of galaxies being born. They were the moments that made up the fabric of a happy life, the quiet joys that stitched the days together. Elian felt a smile touch his lips. The library truly held everything, not just the grand and the epic, but the small, the gentle, and the sweet. The hallway opened into a large, sunlit rotunda. In the center, instead of a pool or a fountain, there was a single, massive tree. Its trunk was thick and gnarled, made of the same golden marble as the pillars, but its leaves were made of thin, hammered gold. They rustled and chimed in a soft, unfelt wind, casting a dappled, dancing light on the floor. At the base of the tree, nestled amongst its roots, were several cushioned divans, inviting rest. Elian felt the warmth and the gentle, chiming music of the leaves, and decided to accept the invitation. He settled onto one of the divans. It was upholstered in a soft, warm velvet, the color of saffron. He lay back, his head resting on a plush cushion, and looked up into the branches of the golden tree. The light that filtered through the leaves was warm and gentle on his eyes, and the continuous, soft chiming was deeply hypnotic. It was like listening to a gentle wind chime on a perfect summer day. He closed his eyes, but the warm, golden light remained behind his eyelids. He felt himself drifting, not into sleep, but into a state of profound relaxation. The gentle whispers of the contented stars in the corridor, the warmth of the air, the soft music of the leaves, it all combined to create a sense of absolute, worry-free peace. He felt no need to think, to analyze, to understand. He only needed to be, to exist in this perfect moment of warmth and gentle sound. Time slipped away. His breathing became slow and deep. The tension he never even knew he carried in his shoulders seemed to melt away. This room, this orchard of tranquility, as he decided to call it, was a place of pure sensory bliss. It was a reminder that sometimes the most profound experience is simply the absence of struggle, the presence of simple, uncomplicated comfort. When he eventually opened his eyes, he felt as if he had slept for a week, though he knew he had only been drifting in that peaceful, waking state. He sat up, feeling light and refreshed. The golden leaves of the tree,
continued their soft, chiming dance. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for this place, for the simple, restorative power of its wood and sound. He rose from the divan and walked to the great tree. He reached out and gently touched its trunk. The golden marble was warm and smooth, and a faint, pleasant vibration traveled from it into his hand. It felt alive, a gentle, sleeping giant. He walked around the tree, his hand trailing on its bark. On the other side, hidden from the entrance, he found something unexpected. Carved into the trunk of the tree was a small, circular door, no higher than his waist. It had a simple, brass handle shaped like a curled leaf. It was so seamlessly integrated into the gnarled texture of the trunk that he would have missed it if he hadn't been looking closely. A new wave of gentle curiosity washed over him. Where could this tiny door lead? Without hesitation, he turned the brass handle. It clicked softly, and the little door swung open.
He had to crouch low to look inside. The opening revealed a narrow, spiraling staircase, seemingly carved from the heartwood of the tree itself. It descended into darkness, but it was not a frightening darkness. A soft, warm light seemed to pulse from deep below, and the air that drifted up smelled sweet and earthy, like honey in rich soil. It was an inviting mystery. He set his moonstaff on the floor beside the opening, as its cool, white light felt out of place with the warm glow from below. He got down on his hands and knees and shuffled through the small doorway. As soon as he was inside, the round door swung silently shut behind him, enclosing him in the warm, scented darkness of the passage. The only light was the gentle, pulsing glow from the bottom of the staircase. The stairs were smooth and worn, as if by the passage of many feet over many ages. They were just wide enough for him, and the spiraling curve was gentle and rhythmic. As he descended, the warm, honeyed scent grew stronger, and he began to hear a low, deep humming sound. It was not the mechanical hum of the library's systems, but a living sound, the collective hum of thousands of tiny, busy lives. The staircase opened into a vast, cavernous space. The humming was loud here, a resonant, peaceful drone that filled the air. The source of the light and the sound was immediately apparent. The cavern was a colossal honeycomb. The walls, the ceiling, even the floor, were made of perfect, glowing hexagonal cells. Some cells were dark and empty. Others were filled with a slowly swirling, luminous liquid that looked like liquid sunlight. And crawling over every surface, tending to the great comb, were bees. They were not ordinary bees. They were larger, the size of his thumb, and their bodies were not black and yellow, but were crafted from the same golden-veined marble as the tree above. Their wings were iridescent, like dragonfly wings, and they beat so fast they were just a blur, creating the deep, resonant hum that filled the cavern. They moved with a calm, focused purpose, ignoring him completely. Elian stood in awe. He was in the heart of the tree, in a place of industry and creation. He watched as some of the marble bees deposited glowing pollen they had gathered from some unseen, luminous flower. Others tended to the cells filled with liquid light, sealing them with a pearlescent wax. This was where the feeling of contentment he had experienced above is being made, distilled, and stored. It was a honey of pure happiness. He walked carefully across the hexagonal floor. The marble bees paid him no mind, parting around his feet and continuing their tireless work. The air was thick and warm, and the sweet scent of the honey was intoxicating. He approached one of the open cells, filled with the glowing liquid sunlight. He peered inside. The liquid swirled with a slow, hypnotic grace. He could feel the warmth radiating from it, and a pure, undiluted sense of joy. This was not a memory of joy, like the star orbs held. It was the essence of joy itself, the raw material.
He understood that the hazy golden stars in the corridor above were fed by this place. This cavern was the larder, the pantry of peace for this entire section of the library. The golden leaves of the tree on the surface were the blossoms, and these marble bees were the gatherers and distillers. He felt a profound respect for the ceaseless, quiet labor of these creatures. They were creating one of the most precious things in the universe: simple, uncomplicated happiness. They worked in perfect harmony, a silent, unified community dedicated to a single beautiful purpose. Elian felt no desire to interfere, to touch, or to taste. He was, as always, the quiet observer, the privileged witness to another of the library's endless, gentle wonders.
He spent a long time in the honeycomb cavern, simply watching the bees, listening to their resonant hum, and basking in the warm golden light. It was a deeply meditative experience. The bees' focused, purposeful movements were calming to watch, a living mandala of work and harmony. There was no sense of frantic hurry, only a deep, abiding rhythm of creation. Eventually, he knew it was time to leave. He had seen what he was meant to see. He made his way back to the spiral staircase, the marble bees parting before him. He gave the cavern one last, grateful look, then began his ascent. The humming faded below him, and the sweet scent of honey grew fainter. He emerged back into the sunlit rotunda at the base of the golden tree. He picked up his staff, its cool, milky light a stark contrast to the golden warmth he had just left. The small, round door clicked shut behind him. He looked at the golden tree with new appreciation, now understanding the deep, living secret it held within its trunk. He had learned that contentment was not just a state of being, but a thing that could be cultivated, gathered, and stored, a precious resource created by tireless, gentle work. Leaving the orchard of tranquility behind, Elian felt a renewed sense of wonder. The library was a place of layers, of secrets hidden within secrets. Every time he thought he was beginning to understand its scope, it revealed a new, deeper level of complexity and beauty. He followed a new corridor, this one with walls that felt like soft, worn suede, the color of a dove's wing. The air was neutral here, neither warm nor cold, and it was utterly silent. The stars on these shelves were unique. They were not orbs, but were shaped like bells of all sizes, from tiny, tinkling silver bells to large, resonant bronze ones. They did not glow with their own light, but they shimmered, catching the light of his staff as he passed. And they did not whisper. They were completely, profoundly silent. He stopped before a medium-sized bell made of a dark, coppery metal. It was unadorned, its surface smooth and cool. He felt the familiar pull, the invitation to interact. He reached out a hesitant hand, not sure what to expect. He gently touched the lip of the silent bell. The moment his finger made contact, a sound bloomed in his mind. It was not a sound his ears could hear, but a clear, perfect note that resonated through his entire being. The note was pure and clear, without overtone or echo. It was the sound of a single perfect moment of clarity. The kind of clarity that comes after a long period of confusion, when a difficult problem suddenly resolves itself in the mind. The feeling of a sudden, quiet aha. The note held for a long moment, a perfect, singular vibration of understanding, and then it faded, leaving behind a sense of deep mental peace. Elian stood, marveling. These were the bells of clarity. Each one, he now understood, held a different note, a different flavor of understanding. He moved to the next bell, a small silver one. He touched it, and a high, bright, tinkling note filled his consciousness. This was the clarity of seeing something beautiful for the first time. The sudden appreciation of a pattern in the frost on a leaf, or the color of the sky after a storm. It was a note of delightful, surprising insight. He spent a long time in the Hall of Bells, moving from one to the next,
gently touching them and experiencing their unique notes of aha. A large bronze bell offered a deep, resonant note, the slow, dawning understanding of a great truth, a realization that settles over you slowly, over years. A small, crystalline bell gave a sharp, fleeting note, the witty spark of the clever idea, a fleeting moment of intellectual brilliance. It was a symphony for the mind, a concert of pure cognition.
This section of the library was a gymnasium for the intellect, a place to sharpen the mind and find peace through understanding. It was a powerful and invigorating experience, but also a tiring one. After experiencing a dozen different notes of clarity, Elian felt his mind was full. He decided to leave the rest of the bells for another time. The corridor's bells ended at a heavy, iron-bound door. Unlike the other doors he had encountered, this one had a large iron ring for a handle. It looked solid and final. He grasped the cold, heavy ring and pulled. The door swung open with a low groan, revealing a new and surprising vista. He was standing at the top of a wide stone staircase that led down into a vast, open-air courtyard. And it was raining. A soft, gentle rain was falling from a sky of uniform gray. The air was cool and smelled of wet stone and damp earth. The courtyard below was paved with smooth gray flagstones, and in the center stood a single, beautiful sculpture of a coiled dragon, its stone scales glistening with rainwater. The sound of the rain was real, a gentle, constant patter on the stones, a soft hiss in the air. After so long in the silent, enclosed spaces of the library, the open sky and the sound and feel of real rain were a startling and beautiful sensory experience. Elian stood under the protection of the doorway for a moment, simply watching the rain fall. It was not a sad or gloomy rain, but a soft, cleansing one, the kind of rain that makes the world feel fresh and new. The light from his staff seemed to diffuse in the misty air, creating a soft halo around him. He felt a desire to walk in it, to feel the coolness on his skin. He stepped out from the doorway and began to walk down the wide, shallow steps. The cool droplets of rain fell on his hair and his face, and it felt wonderful. It was a real physical sensation, grounding and immediate. It was a perfect contrast to the purely mental experience of the Hall of Bells. The library, it seemed, knew exactly what he needed, providing a perfect balance of experiences. He reached the bottom of the stairs and walked across the wide courtyard. His boots made soft, splashing sounds on the wet flagstones. The rain was steady and gentle, running in rivulets between the stones. He approached the statue of the dragon. It was beautifully carved, its form both powerful and serene. It seemed to be sleeping in the rain, its stone head resting on its coiled tail. Water dripped from the end of its snout, a slow, rhythmic beat that joined the gentle patter of the rain. He reached out and touched the dragon's wet, cool scales. The stone was smooth and worn, and he could feel a faint, deep vibration coming from it, like the slow, sleeping breath of the mountain from which it was carved. He felt a sense of immense, peaceful strength from the sculpture. It was a guardian of this quiet, wangy place. He walked around the courtyard, letting the rain wash over him. There were no stores here, no books, no bells. There was only the rain, the stone, the sky, and the sleeping dragon. It was a place of elemental simplicity, a place to simply be. He lifted his face to the gray sky, letting the cool water trickle down his cheeks. He felt as if the rain were washing away the dust of his long travels, cleansing his mind and his spirit. Around the edges of the courtyard, he noticed small sheltered alcoves carved into the stone walls. Inside each alcove was a simple stone bench. He chose one and sat down, protected from the direct fall of the rain, but still surrounded by its sound and scent. From his sheltered spot,
He watched the rain fall in the courtyard, the world reduced to shades of gray and the gentle, persistent music of the wire.
He sat on the stone bench for a long, peaceful time, the rhythm of the rain seeping into him. It was a deeply meditative state, his thoughts slowing down to match the steady, gentle pace of the downpour. He felt a sense of profound peace, the kind that comes from accepting the world exactly as it is. There was nothing to do, nothing to achieve, nothing to understand. There was only the watching, the listening, the feeling. As he sat there, he noticed a subtle change in the light. A soft, warm glow began to emanate from the dragon statue. It started at its heart and slowly spread through the stone, illuminating the intricate scales from within. The dragon was no longer cold, gray stone, but a creature of warm, golden light, its inner fire glowing softly in the rain. The light it cast was soft and warm, and it made the falling raindrops glitter like tiny, descending diamonds. The courtyard was transformed from a place of cool, gray melancholy into a scene of breathtaking, gentle beauty. The warm light from the dragon and the cool patter of the rain created a perfect harmony of opposites. Elian watched, mesmerized, feeling a sense of quiet joy rise within him. It was an unexpected gift, a secret beauty revealed only to those who were patient enough to sit and wait. The dragon's inner light continued to glow, a steady, warm beacon in the sand rain. Elian felt that the light was not just for him, but for the courtyard itself, a quiet, inner warmth to ward off the chill of the rain. It was a gesture of self-comfort, of quiet resilience. He felt a deep affection for the sleeping, glowing dragon. After a time, he knew he was ready to move on. He rose from the bench, the peaceful rhythm of the rain still echoing within him. He gave the glowing dragon a last, grateful look, then walked back across the wet courtyard. As he ascended the wide stone steps, the rain began to soften, and by the time he reached the heavy iron-bound door, it had faded to a fine, silvery mist. He stepped back inside, and the door swung shut with a soft sigh, leaving the gentle rainy world behind. He found himself in a new corridor, one he had never seen before. The walls here were made of dark, polished wood, like the hull of an old ship. The air smelled of salt and canvas. And for the first time, there was movement. High above, through a series of thick glass plates in the ceiling, he could see a dark, starry sky, and the stars were moving. They were drifting slowly, purposefully, in a single direction, like a great, silent river. He was in some kind of observatory, but it felt more like the viewing deck of a vast, silent ship sailing through the cosmos. He walked down the long wooden corridor, his footsteps echoing softly. The only light came from the moving star field above, and the gentle glow of his own staff. On the walls, between polished brass fittings, these circular windows, like portholes. He walked over to one and looked out. He did not see the familiar darkness of the library's voids or the misty gray of the courtyard. He saw space, real, deep, terrifyingly beautiful space. He saw the graceful, spiraling arms of a distant galaxy, a swirl of billions of points of light. He saw the vibrant, painterly colors of the stellar nursery, vast clouds of gas and dust illuminated from within by newborn stars. He felt a dizzying sense of scale, of immense speed and profound stillness, all at once. The library was moving. This realization settled over him not with a shock, but with a sense of profound rightness. Of course it was moving. It was not a static museum. It was a vessel, a great, silent ark, sailing the sea of the cosmos, gathering its stories, its memories, its feelings. He, the keeper, was a passenger, a crew member on this endless, silent voyage. The thought was staggering, and yet deeply comforting. His small, quiet life was part of the grandest journey imaginable. He walked from one porthole to the next, a silent traveler watching the universe drift by. Each window offered a new, breathtaking vista. One showed a binary star system, two suns of blue and orange, locked in a graceful, eternal dance. Another looked out upon a field of dark matter, an emptiness that was not empty, its presence felt by the way it bent the light of the galaxies behind it. Another showed the lonely, beautiful death of a star, its outer layers expanding in a perfect, glowing sphere of red and gold. There were no whispers here. The spectacle was too grand for whispers. It was a purely visual experience, a silent movie of cosmic creation and destruction. Elian felt utterly humbled, a tiny speck of consciousness, witnessing the grandest theater in existence. The quiet duties of his life, tending the orbs, listening to their stories, seemed both infinitesimally small and infinitely important. He was preserving the echoes of these vast, silent events. He was the memory of the ship. He eventually came to the end of the long viewing gallery. Before him was a single, high-backed chair, identical to the one in the scriptorium, bolted to the floor and facing a single, vast window that took up the entire far wall. It was the ship's bridge, the captain's seat. He approached it slowly, with a sense of reverence. The great window looked out upon the path ahead. A river of stars, a current in the cosmic ocean, flowed directly towards them. The library was following this current, sailing gracefully through the interstellar void. The chair was empty. There was no helm, no controls, no instruments. The ship, it seemed, steered itself, guided by the same gentle, intuitive pull that guided Elian through its halls. He stood behind the chair for a long time, simply watching the star stream flow towards him. It was mesmerizing, like watching a river at night. A sheer, silent, relentless motion was hypnotic. He felt the movement of the library not as a lurch or a vibration, but as a deep, fundamental hum that resonated in the very atoms of his being. He was part of the ship, and the ship was part of the journey. He felt no desire to sit in the chair. It was not his place. His place was in the quiet halls below, with the memories. This place, this bridge, was for watching the present unfold, for seeing the story as it was being written across the canvas of the void. He was the librarian, not the navigator. He felt a sense of profound peace in his understanding of his role. He had a purpose, and it was a good one. After a time, he turned away from the great window and the endless river of stars. He found a small, unassuming door in the side wall, which he knew would lead him back into the more familiar parts of the library. He stepped through, leaving the silent brights behind, and found himself in a quiet, softly lit corridor. The scented ozone and old stone returned, and the profound sense of movement faded, replaced by the familiar feeling of timeless stillness. He was back in the repository, the archives, but his perception had been permanently altered. He knew now that the stillness was an illusion, the peace of a passenger on a smooth and silent voyage. The library was not a building, but a vessel, and the stars on its shelves were not just memories, but souvenirs from 1,000 different courts of call, 1 billion different lifetimes. He resumed his walk, his staff's light a familiar comfort. He felt the gentle pull of a star that needed his attention, a small golden orb flickering faintly on the high shelf. He made his way towards it, his purpose clearer and deeper than ever before. He was not just tending a light. He was polishing a memento from a long and beautiful journey, ensuring its story would not be forgotten as the great ship sailed on into the endless, silent night. The gentle pull led him to a section he called the Whispering Gallery. It was a long, curved hall where the acoustics were strange and wonderful. A single soft sound made at one end could be heard with perfect clarity at the other. The stars here were mostly quiet, their whispers so subtle that this acoustic amplification was necessary to hear them all. They were the shyest, most introverted of stars. The star that needed him was on a shelf so high he could not reach it. This was not uncommon. The library had ways. He stood beneath the flickering golden orb and simply waited, his gaze soft and patient. After a moment, the section of shelf the star rested on began to glow with a soft blue light. It detached from the wall and floated gently down towards him, coming to a halt at eye level. He looked at the small golden star. Its light was fluttering like a nervous bird. Its whisper, amplified by the gallery's magic, was a feeling of being overlooked, of being small in a world of giants, of having a beautiful secret but being too shy to share it. Elian understood. He did not offer warmth or comfort. He simply offered his attention. He leaned closer, his expression one of gentle, patient interest. "I am listening," he projected, not with words, but with a feeling of open, receptive silence. The star's flickering seemed to lessen slightly, its shy whisper growing a fraction bolder. A story began to emerge, not in a rush, but hesitantly, in small fragments of feeling. It was the memory of a tiny, forgotten moon, orbiting a gas giant on the far edge of a solar system. No one ever looked at it. The grand, ringed planet it circled got all the attention. But this tiny moon had a secret. On its dark side, away from the light of its distant sun, there were caves, and inside the caves, phosphorescent crystals grew. They were not bright, but they cast a soft, internal glow, a tapestry of ethereal blue and green light that illuminated the silent underground grottos. It was a hidden, secret beauty, seen by no one, existing only for itself. The whisper was the feeling of that quiet, secret pride, the joy of holding a beautiful thing that was yours alone. Elian listened until the story was complete. He felt the quiet joy of the little moon, the peaceful solitude of its glowing caves. When the whisper faded, the star's light was no longer flickering. It was a steady, soft, and confident golden glow. It had shared its secret and had been heard. It was no longer just overlooked, it was known. Elian smiled. The shelf glowed its blue light again and floated serenely back to its high, quiet place on the wall. His work here was done. As he turned to leave the whispering gallery, he noticed a new feature he had never seen before. Set into the curved outer wall of the gallery was a series of shallow, circular alcoves. Each alcove was empty, but the back of it was not stone. It was a shimmering, silvery surface, like a still pool of mercury. It seemed to ripple slightly as he approached. He stopped before one of the alcoves, intrigued. He looked at his reflection in the silvery surface. It was him, but not quite. The image was softer, its edges blurred, as if he were seeing a memory of himself. He reached out a hand, and his reflection did the same. As his fingers neared the surface, the image changed. It was no longer him. The face looking back was younger. A boy with wide, curious eyes, standing in a field of tall grass at twilight, looking up at the first evening star. The reflection was not showing him his past, for he had no memory of such a past. It was showing him a feeling of youthful wonder. The silvery surface was a mirror of emotion, reflecting not his physical form, but his soul. He felt a quiet sense of wonder, the same feeling he saw in the boy's face. He moved to the next mirror. As he stood before it, his reflection shifted again. This time, it showed an old man with kind, tired eyes, sitting on a porch, watching the sunset, a warm mug held in his gnarled hands. The feeling that emanated from the mirror was one of deep, peaceful contentment, a sense of a long life well lived, and a quiet, welcome rest. Elian felt a corresponding wave of contentment wash over him, the peace of the weaver's cottage, the warmth of the golden tree. He walked along the line of mirrors, each one showing him a different face, a different scene, a different emotion. A musician, her eyes closed in rapture as she played a violin, her face a mask of passionate concentration. A scholar, his brow furrowed in focus, leaning over an ancient text. A gardener, smiling with simple pride at a blooming flower. Each image was a reflection of a facet of his own inner world, the emotions and feelings he had gathered on his journey through the library. He realized these mirrors were a tool for self-reflection, a way to understand the complex tapestry of feelings that made up a soul. The library was not just a collection of external stories. It was also a map of the inner world. It offered not just knowledge of the cosmos, but knowledge of the self. The last mirror was different. It was darker, the silvery surface swirling like smoke. When he stood before it, it did not show him a person. It showed him a place. It showed him the vast, silent breach crossing the chasm of floating islands. It showed him the crescent-moon boat, waiting patiently. The feeling it reflected back at him was one of gentle, poignant solitude. It was not a negative feeling. It was the feeling he had recognized on his first journey across that bridge. A simple, profound truth of his own aloneness in this vast and beautiful place. Seeing it reflected back at him was not sad. It was clarifying. It was an acceptance of his role, his nature. He was the solitary keeper, the lonely passenger. And that was okay. It was more than okay. It was beautiful in its own quiet, melancholy way. He stood before this final mirror for a long time, accepting the truth of the image, the truth of the feeling. He felt a sense of quiet strength settle in him. To know oneself truly and completely was a source of profound peace. He turned away from the mirrors, feeling more centered, more solid than he had before. His wanderings next led him to a part of the library that seemed to be under construction, or perhaps deconstruction. The familiar perfect order was gone. Here, shelves lay in pieces on the floor. Great pillars were cracked and tilted, and star orbs, all of them dark and cold, were scattered like marbles. But it did not feel like a place of disaster. The air was calm, and there was a scent of ozone and renewal, like the air after a thunderstorm. In the center of the vast ruined chamber, a single immense star orb pulsed with a powerful white light. It was a light of immense energy and heat. Around it, several of the dark, cold orbs were slowly orbiting. As Elian watched, one of the dead orbs spiraled closer and closer to the great white star, until it was drawn in and consumed. The central star flashed brighter for a moment, and then settled back to its steady, powerful pulse. He was witnessing the end of a cycle. This was a stellar forge, a place of recycling. The old, exhausted stories, their whispers faded to nothing, were being returned to their source. Their matter and energy were being broken down, recycled, to one day be reborn as new stars in the nursery. It was the library's way of tidying up, of ensuring that nothing was wasted, that every ending was also a new beginning. Elian felt a sense of awe at the raw, creative power of the forge. It was not a violent or chaotic process, but a slow, deliberate, and orderly one. The dead stars were not destroyed, but transformed. Their essence was being returned to the great cosmic soup, ready to be imbued with new dreams, new memories, new feelings. It was a beautiful, efficient,
and deeply hopeful process. He noticed small, silent figures moving through the ruined chamber. They were not beings like himself or the weaver. They were more like automatons, crafted from polished stone and light. They moved slowly, gathering the scattered dead orbs and placing them gently into the slow orbit around the central forge star. They were the librarian's janitors, the quiet workers who facilitated the process of renewal. He watched them for a while, their movements slow and graceful. They paid him no mind, their focus entirely on their task. They were another part of the library's silent, unseen machinery, another testament to the thought and care that had gone into the creation and maintenance of this incredible place. Elian felt a sense of kinship with them. They were all workers here, all serving the grand, quiet purpose of the library, each in their own way. He left the forge of renewal behind, the image of creation from destruction fresh in his mind. The next corridor he entered was filled with a soft, pinkish light, and the air was warm and smelled faintly of cherry blossoms. The walls were not solid, but seemed to be made of woven clouds, soft and intangible. The stars in this section were all paired. 2 orbs, always of complementary colors, would sit side by side on the shelves, so close they were almost touching. Their whiskers were intertwined, impossible to separate. He stopped before it there, one a soft rose color, the other a pale mint green. He listened. The whisper was not a memory or a feeling, but a conversation. It was the silent, intuitive understanding between 2 beings who know each other perfectly. The feeling of finishing each other's sentences. The comfort of shared silence. The quiet joy of knowing that you are perfectly understood without having to speak a word. This was the Hall of Connections, a section dedicated to the beauty of partnership and empathy. He walked down the hall, listening to the solemn conversations of the paired stars. A pair of deep blue and bright orange orbs whispered of a boisterous, lifelong friendship, full of shared laughter and adventure. A pair of silver and gold orbs whispered of a teacher and a student, a respectful exchange of wisdom and eager curiosity. A pair of dark violet and pale lavender orbs whispered of a parent and child, a story of protection, guidance, and eventual bittersweet letting go. Each pair told a different story of connection, of the invisible, powerful threads that bind 2 souls together. It was a beautiful and heartwarming experience. Elian, in his solitude, had never experienced such connections, but he could appreciate their beauty. He was the observer, the archivist of feelings he himself did not possess, and he felt a quiet, vicarious joy in their existence. At the end of the hall, on a pedestal of its own, was a single large orb. It was a swirling opalescent sphere of 100 different colors. As he approached, he realized it was not one orb, but hundreds of tiny star orbs, all spinning together in a single, harmonious sphere. The whisper from it was immense. It was the feeling of a community, of a city, of a whole civilization. It was the complex, layered, and beautiful feeling of millions of individual lives and stories, all interconnected, all part of a single greater whole. It was the ultimate connection.
The feeling from the community orb was overwhelming in its complexity, yet deeply peaceful. It was the sound of 1,000,000 different voices singing in harmony. Elian stood before it for a long time, letting the feeling of belonging wash over him. It was the opposite of the solitude he had felt in the mirror of emotion, and yet it did not contradict it. He understood that both were valid, both were beautiful. A soul could be a solitary wanderer and, at the same time, connected to the great universal story of all things. He left the Hall of Connections with a new sense of the richness of existence. The library had shown him the beauty of solitude and the beauty of community.
the peace of stillness, and the joy of creation. It was a place of perfect balance, holding all the facets of the universe in a gentle, non-judgmental embrace. He found himself now in a very simple, quiet part of the library. The corridors were unadorned. The light was a soft, neutral white, and the stars on the shelves were simple, clear crystal spheres. They held no light of their own, and at first, he thought they held no whispers. But as he paused and listened with his deepest sense, he found their secret. They did not hold memories of the past. They held possibilities for the future. He reached out and touched one of the clear crystal orbs. It was cool and smooth. When he touched it, a vision bloomed in his mind. It was not a memory, but a potential. He saw a desert planet, barren and red. He saw a comet of ice, trailing its long, beautiful tail on a collision course with this planet. He saw the impact, the ice melting, the water flowing into the deep canyons, forming rivers, then seas. He saw the first faint blush of green appearing at the water's edge. It was a story that had not happened yet, but could. A potential future, a possible destiny. He pulled his hand back, the vision fading. He moved to another orb. This one showed him a potential work of art, a sculpture of breathtaking beauty, carved from a meteor of unknown metal. He saw the artist who could one day create it, her hands moving with inspired grace. He saw the finished piece standing in a gallery, inspiring awe in all who saw it. This was the Hall of Possibilities, a repository of unborn dreams. The library did not just store what has been, it dreamed of what could be. It was a place of infinite hope, a testament to the universe's endless capacity for creation and beauty. Elian was deeply moved. The library was not just an archive, it was an engine of inspiration. Perhaps, he thought, these possibilities were not just stored here, but were subtly broadcast out into the universe, planting seeds of ideas in the minds of artists, scientists, and dreamers. Perhaps the library was not just a passive observer, but an active, gentle participant in the unfolding story of the cosmos. This thought filled him with a quiet, profound joy. His work, his gentle tending of the stars, was part of this grand creative project. By keeping the memories alive, he was providing the foundation upon which new possibilities could be built. The past and the future were connected, a continuous flowing river, and the library was the heart that pumped the water. He walked through the halls of clear crystal orbs, not touching any more of them. It felt too intimate, too sacred, to peer into these unborn dreams. It was enough to know that they were here, a quiet promise of a future filled with wonder and beauty. He left the hall with a sense of purpose that was deeper and more vibrant than ever before. He was not just a keeper of the past, but a guardian of the future.
His path now led him downwards, down a long, gently sloping ramp that curved into the deeper foundations of the library. The walls changed from smooth stone to rough-hewn rock, and the air grew cool and damp with the clean scent of petrichor. He could hear a faint, rhythmic sound ahead, a slow, deep, powerful beat, like a colossal heart. The ramp opened into an immense cavern, lit by glowing mosses that grew in patches on the rock walls. In the center of the cavern was a sight that made him pause in awe. It was the heart of the library, a colossal, living, crystalline heart, easily as large as the weaver's cottage. It was translucent, and with each slow, powerful beat, a wave of soft, white light pulsed through its intricate, geometric chambers. This was the source of the library's energy, the engine that powered its impossible existence. The rhythmic beat was the pulse he sometimes felt through the floor, the deep hum that was the background music of his entire life. He was standing at the very center of everything,
the source of all the magic he had witnessed. He approached the great crystalline heart slowly. The air around it vibrated with each beat, a gentle, powerful wave of energy that washed over him. It was not a jarring force, but a deeply calming one, like sitting next to a purring cosmic cat. The light that pulsed from it was pure and clean, and he felt it clearing his mind, soothing his spirit. Flowing into the heart were thousands of tiny shimmering threads of light, coming from all directions. He realized he was seeing the whispers, the memories, the feelings of all the stars in the library, flowing here to be processed, powered, and sustained. And flowing out of the heart were another set of threads, carrying the life force back out to the farthest corners of the repository. It was a closed, perfect system, a living, breathing entity of immense scale and beauty. He felt an overwhelming sense of love for this place, for this great, gentle heart that had been the silent companion of his entire existence. He reached out and placed his palm on its crystalline surface. The crystal was worn and vibrated with a deep, soothing rhythm. He felt a sense of direct communication, a wordless exchange of gratitude and affection. The heart seemed to pulse a little brighter in response to his touch. He stayed with the heart for a long time, his hand resting on its surface, his own breathing and heartbeat synchronizing with its slow cosmic rhythm. He felt a sense of complete unity with the library, no longer just its keeper, but an integral part of its circulatory system. The peace he felt was absolute, a profound sense of being in exactly the right place at the right time. When he finally drew his hand back, he felt energized and serene. He knew his wanderings were drawing to a close. He had seen the archives, the workshops, the creative hubs, the command deck, and now the engine room. He had seen the full scope of this magnificent vessel he called home. There was only one place left to go. He turned from the heart and saw a single small doorway in the cavern wall, one he hadn't noticed before. It was a simple, arched opening leading into darkness, but he knew, with unerring certainty, that it was the way. It was the path back to where he had begun so long ago. He stepped through the archway, leaving the rhythmic pulse of the gray heart behind him.
The passage was dark and silent. He brought his staff up, and its moon orb cast a gentle, familiar glow. The passage was a simple, tunnel-like corridor, carved from the same rough, dark rock as the heart cavern. It was long and straight, and he walked for what felt like a long time, the only sound the soft padding of his own feet. Slowly, a new light became visible ahead, a soft, familiar glow. The corridor opened up, and he stepped out into a place he knew better than any other. It was the small, circular room where he lived. His simple bed, his small table, the shelf with his few personal belongings. It was all exactly as he had left it, though it felt like a lifetime ago. He stood in the center of the room, looking around. It seemed so small now, after the vastness of the places he had seen, but it did not feel confining. It felt cozy, safe, and profoundly peaceful. It was his anchor, his own quiet harbor in the vastness of the library. He walked over to his bed and sat down on the edge, the familiar, soft blanket a comforting presence. He looked at his small shelf. On it were a few objects he had gathered over the years, though he could not remember gathering them. A piece of smooth green glass, a small, perfectly spherical stone, a single silvery feather. They were his own small, silent stories, the predecessors to the black stone the weaver had given him. He felt a sense of deep contentment. His journey had not been a flight from this small room, but a journey to understand it, to understand its place in the grander scheme of things. And now he knew. It was a quiet, necessary part of the whole, just like him. He lay back on his bed, his staff
resting on the floor beside him, its light casting a soft glow on the ceiling. He felt a gentle, pleasant weariness, the weariness that comes at the end of a long and satisfying day's work. He closed his eyes, and the gentle, distant hum of the library, the faint, rhythmic beat of the great heart, was a soothing lullaby. He had wandered far, he had seen wonders, and now he was home. The journey had changed him, deepened him, but it had also led him right back to where he belonged. And he knew as he drifted off into a peaceful sleep that he would wake up tomorrow and do his work, not as a duty, but as a joyful, willing participant in the beautiful, endless story of the Library of Whispering Stars. The cycles of his life settled back into their familiar, gentle rhythm. He would wake, walk the quiet halls, tend to the stars, and return to his room to rest. But the rhythm was richer now, imbued with the memories of his great journey. When he walked past the Orion Spur, he didn't just see the stars on the shelves. He remembered the scriptorium and the feeling of rain on a tin roof. When he felt the cool air of the deeper sections, he remembered the Isle of Silent Stars and the little glowing stone that held his own story. The library still held its mysteries. He knew there were countless corridors he had yet to walk, innumerable wonders he had yet to see. But the urge to explore was replaced by a quiet, confident patience. The library would reveal its secrets to him in its own time, when he was ready. For now, it was enough to simply do his work, to be the quiet, steady anchor for all the stories the cosmos had to tell. One day, as he was polishing a large sea-green orb that whispered of deep, silent oceans under alien skies, he felt a new kind of pull. It was not the familiar tug of a star in need, nor the gentle curiosity that had led him on his journey. It was a specific summons, a clear, gentle call to a place he had not been in a very long time. He was being called back to the nursery. He set down his polishing cloth and followed the pull. It led him through the familiar halls, past the pillars of solidified night, to the archway of living, silvery branches. He pushed aside the curtain of glowing moss and stepped back into the warm, humid air of the grotto where stars were born. The scene was as he remembered it. The tiny, milky green star seeds drifted and chimed in the air, their whispers full of hopeful dreams. The great coiled vine in the center of the room still dripped its silvery dew, which solidified into new stars as it fell. But there was something different. Standing near the central vine was a figure. It was the Weaver. She stood with her back to him, her long moon-silver braid hanging down her cloaked back. She was not looking at the star seeds, but was gazing intently at the vine itself, one hand resting gently on its thick, coiled surface. She did not turn as he approached, but she spoke, her voice the same warm, dry rustle of leaf. "Welcome back, Keeper. I thought you might feel the call." "Is something wrong?" Elian asked softly, his eyes going from the Weaver to the great vine. He had never felt a sense of wrongness in the library before. The word itself felt alien here. "Not wrong," the Weaver said, finally turning to face him. Her twilight eyes were serene, but held a deep concentration. "Something new, something different." She gestured to the vine. Elian looked closer. At the very tip of the vine, where the silvery droplets of dew usually formed, a single large bud had appeared. It was the size of his fist, and it was not silvery green like the starseeds, but was a deep, velvety midnight blue, shot through with veins of pure gold. It pulsed with a slow, powerful light of its own. "A new star is being born," Elian observed, stating the obvious. "More than a star," the Weaver corrected gently. "The star seeds are dreams of what could be, fragments of potential. This," she said, her gaze returning to the pulsing bud, "is a promise, a destiny. It is a star born with a purpose already written." Elian had never heard of such a thing. The stars he knew were records of the past, or dreams of a future. A star born with its story already intact was a paradox. He stepped closer, peering at the magnificent pulsing bud. He tried to listen for its whisper, but there was nothing. It was utterly silent, gathering its strength, holding its story close. "What is its purpose?" Elian asked. The weaver shook her head slowly. "That is not for us to know yet. Its story will unfold when it is ready. But its birth will be a significant event for the library. It will send ripples through all the corridors." She looked at Elian, a faint, knowing smile on her lips. "I called you here because its care will fall to you. It will require a different kind of tending than the others." A sense of profound responsibility settled over Elian. He had tended to stars that were shy, were gold, were sad. But to be the guardian of a star with a destiny was a new and daunting charge. He looked at the silent pulsing bud and felt a connection to it, a sense of shared purpose, though he did not yet know what that purpose was.
"What must I do?" he asked. "For now, we wait," the weaver said. "We watch. We provide a space of quiet and safety for it to be born." She gestured to a smooth, flat stone near the base of a vine. "Sit with me, keeper. Let us be the quiet audience for this miracle." Elian sat down on the stone, the weaver settling beside him. The air in the nursery was warm and filled with the gentle chiming of the drifting starseeds, but all of their attention was focused on the single, dark blue bud. They sat in a comfortable, companionable silence, two ancient, solitary beings sharing a moment of profound anticipation. They watched as the bud's pulsing grew stronger, the veins of gold within it glowing brighter with each beat. The rest of the vine seemed to be pouring its energy into this one singular creation. No new droplets of dew were forming. All of the nursery's creative force was being channeled into this special birth. The gentle chiming of the starseeds seemed to quiet down, as if they too were holding their breath, waiting to see what new sibling was about to join them. Hours passed, or perhaps moments. Time had a way of stretching and compressing in the library. The bud began to swell, its velvety blue surface becoming taut, the golden veins within it forming intricate patterns, like coastlines on a map of a world yet to be made. The light it emitted was no longer just a pulse, but a steady, powerful glow that cast deep blue and gold shadows across the grotto. Then, with a soft, final pulse that sent a wave of warmth through the entire nursery, the bud began to open. The velvety blue petals, for they looked like petals, peeled back slowly, gracefully, revealing the heart of the new creation. It was not an orb like the other stars. It was a perfect, multifaceted crystal, shaped like a compass rose. At its core, a brilliant, white-hot point of light burned with the intensity of a neutron star, but the light it cast was soft and gentle. The crystal floated free from the vine, rising into the air to hover at the center of the grotto. The moment it was free, it released its whisper. But it was not a whisper. It was a song. The song was unlike anything Elian had ever heard. It was a complex, beautiful melody that seemed to contain all the emotions of the universe. There was the deep, resonant thrum of the ancient stars, the hopeful chime of the starseeds, the clear, sharp notes at the bells of clarity, the lazy, warm harmony of the orchard of tranquility. It was all there, woven into a single, breathtaking piece of music. The song filled the nursery, and then it flowed out, down the corridors and into every corner of the library. Elian could feel it resonating in the obsidian floors, in the great stone pillars, in the very air he breathed. The entire library seemed to pause its endless, silent work to listen to this new, beautiful music. The song was the star's story, its purpose, its destiny. And while Elian could not understand the specific details, he understood its overall meaning. It was a song of navigation, of guidance. This new star was not a memory or a dream. It was a map. It was a guide. The weaver had tears in her twilight eyes. The same kind of tears of profound emotion Elian had felt in the free-floating starfield.
"It is a compass," she said, her voice filled with awe. "A wayfinder for the library itself." Elian now understood. The library had been sailing on its journey, guided by its own deep, ancient instincts. But this new star, this compass, would provide a new level of clarity, of purpose to its voyage. It would help the great cosmic vessel navigate the currents of space and time with a new and profound understanding. The compass star floated in the center of the room, its song slowly softening to a gentle, continuous hum, its multifaceted surface refracting the light into 1,000 dancing rainbows. The other starseeds, their initial shyness gone, began to drift towards it, circling it in a slow, adoring dance, like planets around a new sun. "It will need a place of honor," the weaver said, rising to her feet. "A place where its song can be heard by the whole library, and where its light can guide the way." Elian knew the place at once. A place for watching, for navigation, for seeing the path ahead. "The breach," he said. The weaver nodded, her eyes gleaming with approval. "The bridge, it is the perfect place." She looked at Elian, her expression both proud and solemn. "Its care is now yours, keeper. It will not need polishing or comfort. It will need a guardian, someone to keep its space clear, to listen to its song, and to ensure its light is never obscured." Elian walked towards the floating compass star. As he drew near, it seemed to hum a little louder, a note of recognition and welcome. He felt its song resonating deep within him, not just in his mind, but in his very soul. He felt a sense of alignment, of purpose, that was clearer and more powerful than anything he had ever known. He was the keeper of stories, and now he was also the guardian of the way. He reached out his hands, and the beautiful crystal star floated gently into his open palms, its light warm, its song a symphony of hope. Carrying the compass star was like holding a piece of living music. Its vibrations traveled up his arms, and its song filled his mind with beautiful, complex patterns of light and sound. He walked out of the nursery, the weaver giving him a deep, respectful nod as he passed. He walked through the familiar corridors of the library, and he could feel the other stars responding to the compass's song. The ancient red stars pulsed a little brighter. The shy blue ones seemed to stand a little straighter on their shelves. The whole library felt energized, awakened. He made his way to the long, wooden gallery that felt like the deck of a great ship. He walked past the portholes, looking out on the swirling nebulae and distant galaxies. He walked to the end of the gallery, to the empty captain's chair before the great star-filled window. This was the place. There was a pedestal in front of the chair, one he hadn't noticed before, or one that perhaps had only just appeared. It was made of the same dark wood as the gallery, and it was waiting. Elian gently placed the compass star upon it. The crystal settled into place with a soft click, and its song swelled, filling the breach with its beautiful, guiding music.
The light from the compass star projected a new image onto the great window. Overlaid on the river of stars that the library was following, a new map appeared. It was a three-dimensional, glowing chart of cosmic currents, of gravitational tides, of hidden pathways through the void. It showed not just the path they were on, but all the possible paths, all the potential destinations. It was a map of infinite possibility, illuminated with the wisdom of a clear and certain purpose. Elian stood back, filled with a sense of profound awe. His role had been transformed. He was no longer just a passive tender of memories. He was an active participant in the library's journey. He would come here each cycle to listen to the compass's song, to watch the cosmic map, and to be the conscious, living witness to the library's navigation through the endless ocean of night.
He looked at the empty captain's chair. He still felt no desire to sit in it. He was not the captain. The library itself was the captain. The compass was its navigator. He was simply the first mate, the trusted guardian of the bridge. And that was the greatest honor he could ever imagine. His new routine began. Each cycle, after his walk through the familiar halls, he would make his way to the bridge. He would stand before the compass star, close his eyes, and simply listen to its song. The music would wash through him, clearing his mind, aligning his spirit with the purpose of the library's journey. The song was ever-changing, subtly shifting its melody and harmony as the library navigated new regions of space, as it approached new fields of potential stories. Sometimes the song was a high, soaring melody of exploration and discovery, as the library sailed through a region rich with young, energetic galaxies. Other times, it was a low, slow, meditative chant, as they passed through vast, ancient voids, spaces of deep quiet and contemplation. The song was a living reflection of the universe through which they traveled. Elian learned to understand the nuances of the music. He could feel when they were approaching a place of great sadness, a star system that had died a tragic death. He could feel when they were nearing a place of immense joy, a world where life was blossoming in a riot of beautiful forms. The compass star was not just a map for the ship, but a map of the emotional landscape of the cosmos. One cycle, the compass's song changed in a way he had never heard before. It became a soft, inquisitive, questioning melody. It was a song of searching. Elian opened his eyes and looked at the great map on the window. A single faint thread of light had appeared on the chart, a path they were not on, leading away from the main stellar river they were following. It pulsed with a soft, gentle light, a beckoning call. The library, in response to the compass's song, began to slowly, gracefully turn. It was deviating from its course for the first time, leaving the well-worn star stream to follow this new, faint path into an unexplored region of the void. Elian watched, his heart filled with a quiet excitement. They were not just gathering random stories anymore. They were on a mission. They were looking for something specific. He did not know what it was. The compass's song was one of seeking, not of knowing, but he trusted it. He trusted the heart of the library. He stood on the bridge, a faithful guardian, as the great vessel sailed on into the unknown, on a quest for a story that had called out to them from across a silent gulf of space.
The journey into the unknown was long and quiet. The stars grew sparse. The grand nebulae faded into the distance. They sailed through a profound and ancient darkness, the only light coming from the compass star and the distant, frosty glitter of galaxies that were millions of light years away. The compass's song was a soft, steady hum now, a melody of patient searching. Elian spent most of his time on the bridge, watching the darkness slide by. He felt a sense of profound peace in the great emptiness. It was not a sterile, dead void, but a place of potential, a silence waiting for a new note to be played. He felt like an explorer from an ancient tale, sailing into uncharted waters in search of a new world. Then, after what felt like an eternity of darkness, a single point of light appeared ahead. It was not a star. It was too small, its light too soft. As they drew closer, he saw what it was. It was a tiny, solitary star orb, floating alone in the middle of the immense void. It was dark, its light completely extinguished. It was a dead story, a lost memory, floating adrift millions of miles from any other star. The library slowed to a halt, its great silent engines falling still. It floated in the void, a silent, waiting mountain of stone and starlight, its attention focused on the tiny, dead orb ahead. The compass's song fell to an almost inaudible whisper, a note of gentle, profound sadness.
This was what they had been searching for. This one lost story. Elian felt a deep pang of empathy for the little orb. To be so alone, so lost in the great empty dark, to have its story extinguished, its memory faded to nothing. He knew what he had to do. His role was not just to be a guardian, but a rescuer. A panel in the side of the bridge slid open, revealing the small, circular hatch. He had never seen it before. A single silver thread, like a spider's silk, floated out from the hatch and tethered itself to his wrist. He understood. He was being asked to go out, to retrieve the lost one. He felt no fear, only a deep sense of purpose. He stepped to the hatch, and the void awaited. A bubble of force, clear and shimmering, formed around him as he stepped through the hatch. He was in space, but he could breathe. The silence was absolute, the most profound quiet he had ever known. The library was a colossal, silent shape behind him, its countless lights, like a galaxy in itself. Ahead of him, floating in the dark, was the small, dead orb. He pushed off gently from the side of the library, and the silver thread unspooled, allowing him to float freely towards his destination. It was like swimming in an ocean of night. The journey was slow and graceful. He felt a sense of utter freedom, of being untethered from all things, a single point of consciousness in the infinite. He reached the dead orb. It was the size of his heart, its surface cold and smooth like polished fat. It was completely inert, without even the faintest residual whisper. It was the saddest thing he had ever encountered. He gently wrapped his hands around it, cradling it as if it were a wounded bird. He held it close to his chest and began the slow journey back to the ship, the silver thread gently reeling him in. Back on the bridge, the voice bubble dissolved, and he stood once more on the solid wooden floor, the cold, dead orb held safely in his hands. The compass's song was still a low, sad whisper. He knew that simply bringing the orb back was not enough. Its story was gone. It needed more than just a shelf. It needed to be healed. He looked at the compass star, its brilliant light a stark contrast to the darkness of the orb in his hands. An idea bloomed in his mind, a gentle suggestion that seemed to come from the compass's song itself. He walked to the pedestal, and with infinite care, he placed the dead black orb directly onto the multifaceted surface of the compass star. The moment the two made contact, the compass's song swelled into a powerful, glorious crescendo. The brilliant, white-hot light at its core flared, and a single pure beam of white light shot from the compass into the heart of the dead orb. The black orb began to glow from within, first a faint gray light, then a soft, warm amber. A whisper, faint and trembling, began to emerge from it. The compass was sharing its own life force, its own energy, to rekindle the lost story. The whisper grew stronger, and the story of the lost orb flooded Elian's mind. It was the story of a very small, very simple creature on a world that had died long ago. It was not a creature of intelligence or power, but it had one simple purpose. It was a light keeper. Its world was dark, and its people navigated by a series of glowing crystals. This little creature's job was to tend to a single small crystal beacon at the very edge of its civilization, ensuring its light never went out. It had done its job faithfully for its entire life. But one day, a cataclysm came. The world died, the people vanished, the crystals all went dark. All except this one. The little creature, with its last ounce of strength, had poured its own life force, its own soul, into its beacon, keeping it lit for just a moment longer. A final, defiant act of hope in the face of utter despair. And then it too had faded, its story lost in the darkness. It was a story of duty, of love, of a small, quiet heroism in the face of oblivion. It was one of the most beautiful and heartbreaking stories Elian had ever heard, and now it was no longer lost. The orb, now glowing with a steady, gentle amber light, floated up from the compass star. Its whisper was no longer sad, but was a quiet, peaceful melody of contentment. It had been found. Its stories remembered. It had a home now. The compass's song returned to its normal, peaceful hum, though perhaps with a new, richer note of satisfaction in its melody. Elian took the healed star in his hands. It was warm now, and it pulsed with a gentle, steady beat. He knew exactly where it belonged. He walked from the bridge, through the quiet corridors, to the whispering gallery. He found an empty spot on a low shelf, a place of honor where the acoustics were perfect. He gently placed the amber orb there. Its quiet, heroic story now had a place to rest, a place where it could be heard and appreciated for all time. He felt a sense of profound satisfaction. This was the culmination of all his work, all his journeys. Not just to tend, but to seek. Not just to listen, but to heal. Not just to keep the stories, but to rescue them.
He returned to the bridge. The library was already moving again, its great engines humming as it turned back towards the main stellar river. Its quest was complete. The cosmic map on the great window was clear once more, the faint beckoning thread of light gone. The compass star's song was one of calm, quiet, fulfilled purpose. Elian stood on the bridge, watching the distant stars drift by. He felt a sense of completeness, of a great chapter coming to a close. The library felt more whole, more perfect, now that the lost story had been brought home. And he felt more whole too. He had found his ultimate purpose. He was the keeper, the guardian, the rescuer. He was the heart's hands, the ship's memory, the compass's companion. He looked out at the endless, beautiful, silent night, and he felt a quiet, simple and profound happiness. He was home, and the ship was sailing on. Life in the library returned to its peaceful, steady rhythm, but it was a new kind of peace for Elian. It was the peace of settled purpose. The journey to retrieve the lost star had answered a question he hadn't even known he was asking. It had defined the ultimate expression of his role. He was not just a caretaker, but an agent of grace in a vast and sometimes forgetful universe. The compass star continued its beautiful, ever-changing song on the bridge, guiding the great vessel through the cosmic seas. The library's path seemed more confident now, its turns more deliberate. It was as if retrieving that one lost story had healed a small forgotten part of the library itself, making it more whole. One cycle, as Elian was making his way to the bridge, he felt a subtle change in the air. A new scent was present, faint but clear. It was the smell of damp earth, of blooming night flowers, and of something else, something ancient and deeply familiar. It was the scent of the weaver's cottage. He paused, his head tilted, listening, and he heard it. A soft, humming melody, a tune he had not heard since he had fallen asleep under the patchwork quilt. The weaver was nearby. He followed the scent and the sound. It did not lead him to a new corridor or a hidden door, but back to the orchard of tranquility, the place with the golden chiming tree. The rotunda was as he remembered it, warm, filled with dappled golden light, the soft music of the leaves a constant, gentle lullaby. And sitting on one of the saffron-coloured divans, her back to him, was the weaver. She was not humming, she was weaving. In her lap was a small, circular loom, and her gnarled, graceful fingers were working with threads of pure light. She was weaving a tapestry of blues and golds, the colours of the compass star and its destiny. She did not look up as he approached. "It is a beautiful song, is it not?" she said, her voice blending with the chiming of the leaves. The song of a purpose fulfilled. "It is," Elian agreed, stopping beside her divan.
He looked at her work. The tapestry she was weaving was not a literal picture of the star, but a visual representation of its music, a pattern of harmony and melody made tangible. You are weaving its story. All great stories should be recorded in more than one way, she said, her fingers never ceasing their intricate dance. You keep its song. I will keep its light. Elian sat on the divan next to her, a comfortable silence settling between them. He watched her work, mesmerized by the skill and grace of her hands. She was pulling threads of light seemingly from the air itself, weaving them into a pattern that was both complex and perfectly, beautifully simple. The library is grateful, the weaver said after a while, her eyes still on her work. You have done well, Keeper. More than well. I only did what the library asked of me, Elian said humbly. The weaver chuckled, a soft, dry sound. The library asks much, but it does not compel. You listened, you trusted, you acted. Many would not. She finally paused her work and looked at him, her twilight eyes full of a deep, ancient warmth. You have become more than a keeper. You have become its partner. The word resonated within Elian. Partner. It felt right. He was not just a servant of this place, but a willing and integral part of its function. A sense of quiet pride, warm and pleasant, bloomed in his chest. The journey has changed you, the weaver observed, her gaze knowing. The solitude you once carried as a simple truth, you now carry as a quiet strength. The purpose you once felt as a duty, you now feel as a joy. Elian nodded. It was all true. He felt as if he had finally grown into the ship of his own soul. And what of you, Weaver? He asked, his curiosity piqued. What is your role in all this? You are not just a keeper of small stories. The weaver smiled her gentle, mysterious smile. I am the one who remembers the patterns, she said. You collect the notes. I see the music. You rescue the threads. I see the tapestry. We are two sides of the same coin, Keeper. The library needs both the particular and the universal. It needs the story, and it needs the meaning of the story. She held up her half-finished tapestry. In the golden light of the orchard, it shimmered with a profound beauty. It was the story of the compass star, yes, but it was also the story of hope, of guidance, of the universe's quiet insistence on finding what was lost. The library is nearing a place of rest, the weaver said, her tone shifting slightly. A quiet harbor, a place for it to anchor for a time, to integrate all that has happened, all the new stories it had gathered. Elian felt a sense of anticipation. He had never known the library to be still. The thought of it anchoring, of a deep and prolonged pause in its endless journey, was a novel one. A harbor? A nebula of deep and dreamless sleep, the weaver explained. A place where time is slow and the currents are calm. It is a place for healing and for growth. Like a great tree in winter, the library must sometimes rest to gather its strength for the seasons to come. She set down her loom. Your work will be different for a time. The stars will not need tending. The compass will sing a soft, sleeping song. Your role will be simply to rest with it, to share in its quiet, restorative peace. The idea of pure rest, of having no duties, no tasks, was strange to Elian. His entire existence had been defined by his gentle work. But he did not feel anxious. He felt a sense of calm acceptance. If the library needed to rest, then he would rest with it. He was its partner, after all. Come, the weaver said, rising from the divan. Let us go to the bridge. Let us watch the arrival together. They walked together, the silent keeper and the wise weaver, through the quiet, golden-lit halls. They made their way to the observation deck, to the bridge, where the compass star hummed its soft, expectant song. They stood side by side before the great window, watching as a new sight came into view. Ahead of them was a vast, beautiful cloud of interstellar dust and gas. It was not the brilliant, fiery nursery of a star-forming region, but a calm, cool nebula of deep, soft colors. Lavender, indigo, and a gentle silvery gray. It looked like a great cosmic thunderhead, but it radiated an aura of profound and utter peace. As the library sailed slowly into the outer wisps of the nebula, the compass star's song softened, its melody slowing to a deep, peaceful, resonant drone. The cosmic map on the window faded away, leaving only the beautiful swirling colors of the great cloud. The hum of the library's engines quieted, the great crystalline heart in its depths slowing to a near imperceptible beat. The light from outside grew softer, more diffuse. The sharp points of distant stars were veiled by the thick, gentle dust. The whole universe seemed to be holding its breath. The library drifted deeper and deeper into the heart of the cloud, until it was completely enveloped in the soft, lavender-gray light. It came to a gentle, final stop. The journey was paused. They had arrived in the harbor of dreams. A profound silence fell, deeper than any Elian had known, save for the soft, sweeping song of the compass star. It was a silence not of emptiness, but of absolute, perfect peace.
"Rest now, keeper," the weaver said softly, her voice the only sound in the great stillness. "Rest, and know that you have earned it." She placed a warm, dry hand on his shoulder for a moment, a gesture of deep affection and farewell. And then she was gone, not in a flash of light, but simply not there anymore. She had dissolved back into the patterns, back into the fabric of the library. Her work for this cycle complete. Elian stood alone on the bridge, but he did not feel lonely. He felt a sense of profound and peaceful solitude. He was the sole, conscious mind on this great sleeping vessel. He was the anchor watch, the guardian of the ship's slumber. He looked around the bridge. The captain's chair seemed to be inviting him now, not as a commander, but as a fellow passenger, taking a well-deserved rest. He walked to it, and for the first time, he sat down. The chair was comfortable, as if it had been made for him. It held him in a gentle, supportive embrace. From this vantage point, he looked out the great window at the swirling lavender clouds of the sleeping nebula. There was nothing to see, and yet everything to feel. The peace of this place was a tangible thing, a soft, heavy blanket that settled over his mind and spirit. The compass star on its pedestal hummed its deep, slow lullaby. Its light was soft and gentle, a quiet nightlight in the dim, peaceful bridge. Elian leaned his head back against the high back of the chair. He did not need to sleep, not in the traditional sense. His rest was a state of being, a deep, meditative stillness that mirrored a slumber of the library around him. He closed his eyes. The song of the compass filled his mind, a slow, gentle, endless melody of peace. The memories of his journey, the floating islands, the golden bees, the rainy courtyard, the rescued star, did not replay in his mind, but settled into a soft, warm, and cherished background, the foundation of the deep and quiet contentment he now felt. He sat in the captain's chair on the silent bridge, a solitary, peaceful figure in the heart of a sleeping cosmic ship. The great library rested in its quiet harbor of dreams, gathering its strength, integrating its stories. The keeper, its faithful partner, rested with it. His work was done, for now. His journey had led him here, to this moment of perfect, absolute peace. The ship was safe. The stories were safe, and all was well. He let his mind drift on the slow, gentle currents of the compass's lullaby, a silent guardian in a silent, dreaming sea of starlight and peace.